All right, in this section, we're going to grab some highlights and process some notes for this article here called A Brief History of Money from Nakamoto.com. A couple of things I want to mention before we jump in. So, in this lesson and the next few lessons, really, I'm going to walk through a very manual process for creating a new page inside of Roam where we're going to house these notes. We're going to manually copy some highlights off of this page and paste them into the graph. And then we're going to do some of our own preliminary note taking just to start to bring our own thoughts to the page. I want to mention here again that this is going to be a very manual process. So if you're already somewhat familiar with Roam and you want to jump to the more kind of streamlined and slightly more technical way of doing things, you can jump forward a few lessons where I'm going to talk about using some additional optional tools like Instapaper and Readwise to sort of supercharge this process and make it more efficient. But I wanted to start with this very manual method for two reasons. Number one, even if you see yourself as the type of user who's going to move to that slightly more advanced method, it's really good to understand things from first principles. So we're going to use these first handful of lessons to really talk about the fundamentals of what we're actually doing when we're taking notes inside of Roam. And then number two, if you're the type of person who just wants to keep the number of tools in your stack to an absolute minimum, you want to optimize for minimal moving parts, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with continuing to do this workflow that I'm going to show you indefinitely. Again, it might be slightly more efficient than some of your other options out there, but it does come with the benefit of not needing additional tools and having to spend the additional time setting those up. And those additional tools also cost a little bit of money. So with that all out of the way, by way of preamble there, let's jump in and get started. So the very first thing that I want to cover here is talking about creating a dedicated page inside of Roam for this article. So what I'm going to do is actually grab the title here of this article, and I'm going to copy that, and then I'll jump back over to my Roam graph, and I'm going to come up here and click in this top bar that says Find or Create Page, and I'll hit Command V to paste that title in there, and that'll give me this new prompt to go ahead and create that new page. So once I've done that, I want to create a few blocks at the top for what is known as metadata. And this is just kind of a fancy term for saying, like, we're going to create a couple of headers to the page, so to speak. These are going to be things like categories, tags, information that's really just designed to help with discoverability, organizing, searching for your pages later, things of that nature. So I'm going to run down the list here, and I'm going to create at the top here one called page tags. Now, while I do this, I want to point out that I'm going to type the double colon symbol there and then type page tags and select that. And this is what is known in Roam as an attribute. We haven't covered this yet in the course, so I want to talk about it here for just a second. Similar to hashtags, which I talked about earlier, attributes functionally, they work exactly like a page reference or using a hashtag. So I can click on that. You'll see all of the places where this attribute is mentioned here in the linked references. So really, again, functions exactly like a page reference. So very much just like hashtags, using attributes very much in my mind is purely a stylistic consideration. The reason that I like to use them in the metadata here is simply because they format as bold, and they also give me the autofill. So when I start typing the word author, that'll come right up. So there you go. There's my second metadata tag is author. The third one that I'm going to use is called full title. I'll come back and talk about what these are here in just a second. The final two that I'm going to use are category as well as URL. But we'll come back and fill those out here momentarily. The next thing that I like to do is just type the minus or the dash symbol 3 times. And that gives me just this nice line here between my metadata and the rest of the content on the page. So once again, purely a stylistic decision on my part, but that is something that I do regularly. So dropping that line in there. And then below that, what I'm going to do really quickly is just create a few headings. This is another thing that we haven't touched on in the course yet, but you can use simple markdown syntax to create some formatting here. So what I want to do is type the hashtag there 3 times. That's going to give me the heading 3 style. I'll hit space. That'll apply the styling. And then I'm going to type the word or the phrase rather, big ideas. I'm going to go down a line and do the same thing. So again, 3 hashtags there and hit space. Then I'm going to type highlights. And then one more for now is going to be additional resources. Now, we'll come back throughout the next handful of lessons and we'll talk about what each one of these sections are. But obviously, these are just really places to house different parts of the note-taking and creative process. So that's going to be it for this lesson. Again, we talked about the manual method that we're going to go through here. We'll get to some of the more advanced tools later. And then we went through and we created our very first page here where we're going to park our article notes.